Hey everybody, Josh from SILCA here with a follow-up to our hack for cold, wet riding video that we did that, wow, did we get some questions, comments, and unfortunately some confusion. So I've got 10 questions from that video that we will cover here. But first, I want to say there's so many comments of people just saying like, oh gosh, wax doesn't work in the rain. Wax makes your chain rust. All this stuff. Guys, wax is always the best option if you can do it. What we are getting into here is the extreme minutia of marginal gaining at the limits of performance, okay? So in every condition, what's your best option? It's going to be a hot wax. What's your second best option? It's going to be a drip wax, okay? When people say wax doesn't work in the rain, well, it actually works a lot better in the rain. It just gets a little bit noisy, a little bit faster. If you don't clean the chain after you ride and you let the bike sit for a week, you might get some surface rust. There's some little details like that, right? Some playing at the edges. But in every condition, what's the fastest option? It's going to be a hot wax. What's the longest lasting option? I mean, truly, when you look at the data, it's going to be a hot wax. What's the best in the rain? Hot wax. What's the best in the mud? It's going to be a hot wax. Second best in all of those, a drip wax. Okay? So this is teasing out extreme performance at the margins of different conditions that you have all asked us about. And the beauty of the hot wax system, and the drip wax system to some extent, is that you can tune and tweak and play with this, right? This isn't a couple of products where, you know, the old days you said like, this is a dry condition lube and this is a wet condition lube. Well, this is an everything's condition lube. And then if you really want to tinker, you can find even more like personally tuned variants of the product using some of these other products that we are telling you about. Okay, so we'll start with that. Question 1, does adding Synergetic to the super secret drip wax have the same effect of improving rain performance? Unfortunately, no. So the thing we need to think about here is that adding a third of a bottle of Synergetic to 400 or 500 grams of hot wax, you are getting you're raising the oil content of that wax from about 0.1, 0.2% up to maybe 3 to 4%. That little higher oil content results in a lower single application longevity in dry conditions, right? So we don't want to add oil to our wax because it reduces dry conditions performance. But the corrosion reducing ingredients in the Synergetic do reduce the likelihood of corrosion over extreme periods of time, 4, 5, 6, 7 days of very wet conditions. It also helps the wax just kind of stick to things a little bit better in those rainy conditions, which kind of delays the onset of the noise. You know, people generally associate the noise with the breakdown of performance of the wax. Really, the onset of noise is the beginning of the breakdown of the wax performance. But when you look at like a pure wet lube, people say, oh, it lasts forever in the rain. Well, it's broken down long ago, and it just has these viscoelastic damping properties to it that make it quiet, so it's just hiding the fact that it's broken down. So unfortunately, no, we cannot add oil to Super Secret. Super Secret is a water alcohol base. The oil will not mix in with that, right? The oil really needs to be in the wax itself and not in the emulsion. And so you could put Synergetic in there, you kind of get a salad dressing. Even if you shake it up, it might look mixed in for a minute, but it is not. It is separated out, and what you end up with is wax and oil separate on the chain. So that is not an option at this point. That is a product that we're kind of looking at, but gosh, when you look at the numbers, the Super Secret at baseline's already competitive, as good, maybe better than most other products in the rain, including just straight oil-based lubes like Synergetic. So this is a hard problem to solve because you're taking an already best-in-class product and we're trying to make it just a little bit better in certain conditions. It's easy to do that with the hot wax because you can sort of mix and blend at home. With an emulsion suspension type product like Super Secret, much harder. Other question, or I guess question 1A, we'll call it. Is there any benefit to adding Synergetic directly on top of your wax chain for rain? No, as I said before, adding it to the hot wax, you can get about 3-4%. That's the max amount of oil you want to have in your wax. If you're just dripping it over top of the wax chain, you're going to be more than 50% Synergetic or oil-based lube on top of the wax. And honestly, it's probably going to come off the chain before it has the time to really mix with the wax that's inside the chain. Now, Synergetic for extreme distance conditions is a great backup that, like, if once the wax is really broken down, really squeezed out of the chain, Synergetic over top on the roadside is a great solution, especially if you don't have time for something like a super secret product to dry. So, you know, we used to, before Endurance Chip, we would say for like our Unbound XL riders, take Synergetic. If it starts to break down and get really bad, just put it over the top and go. Now that we have Endurance Chip, hot wax applications are lasting easily the length of like an Unbound 350. That's 350 miles of gravel, and we're seeing the riders finishing that without problem. So, you know, if you're doing a 500-mile gravel race, maybe take an Endurance Chipped hot wax chain to start and Synergetic as a backup. Not just for commuting, but I did a 2-day gravel ride this summer, starting with a freshly waxed chain. After 50 miles of dry riding, the afternoon consisted of 50 miles of wet riding on gravel and mud roads. Then, camping in humid conditions, I didn't dare add Super Secret because it probably wouldn't dry overnight in the relative humidity that was greater than 85%. So the next day, riding 100 miles on wet gravel and dry pavement mixed, the chain was loud. Hopefully, this hybrid system can work for those situations in the future. Two things here. One, your Super Secret is a water alcohol carrier, and so even at high humidity, it will dry overnight because of the alcohol. So in this instance, your best option would have been to top off with Super Secret overnight. Your other best option here would have been to run with an Endurance Chip. You know, we've said Endurance Chip gives you 10 to 15% improved longevity of the application in extreme wet conditions, and it's also much, much longer lasting in dry conditions. So again, adding oil to our wax, that is for cold, rainy conditions. You know, how cold? I would say freezing and below, you know, maybe somewhere in the just above freezing. The oil in the wax to soften it is really helpful when it is cold and rainy. It is not helpful at all when it is hot and rainy. A good kind of example there would be a product like Squirt or Smooth that are 20 to 30% oil, you know, in those products. And they work well when it's cold. You can look at the zero friction data. They don't work so well when it's hot. You see something like 20% chain wear in Block 1, 1,000 clean kilometer riding with Squirt or Smooth, whereas with hot wax you see 0% wear, and in Super Secret, which I have a bottle here, Super Secret, in that same block you only see a 2% wear. So it's a 10 times improvement by not having that oil in the wax in dry conditions. So again, adding oil to wax only for cold wet. Josh, at what temperature could cold start causing issues with SILCA Secret Chain Blend? Started to cover it. I would say freezing and below is where you're going to start to want to think about maybe adding a little bit of oil. Certainly for fat bike, an extreme, you know, Alaska, I did a bike type condition, 0 Fahrenheit and below. It's absolutely necessary. The wax and the chain will become very stiff at those temperatures, and so you want to add a little bit of oil in there to make it work. Also, you know, the snow can be a little bit abrasive on there, and having that little bit of oil in there helps with that as well. So freezing and below, you know, for I would say probably that low 40s and below, you might want to add just a touch of oil if that's the only condition you're in. If it's warmer than that, really regardless of the mix of conditions, you are better off with an Endurance Chip, which is, again, we've said it before, 10 to 15% longer lasting in the wet when it's warm, and up to, you know, doubling the single application longevity when it's dry and warmer. So, Endurance Chip. Mo Goyette says, I really enjoy SILCA products, but it looks like there's always a new product I need to buy instead of the initial intention that was to have a simple and efficient way to lube my chain and gain efficiency without the maintenance issues of traditional oils. Should SILCA go back to simple mix for guys like me that like to ride their top fine-tuned bikes instead of spending more time waxing chains depending on weather conditions? Thanks. Mo, yes, absolutely. It's called Super Secret. Buy it and stop watching these videos. these videos are for people who have either extreme use cases or who are just super particular about what they're doing. You know, I've always said there's 4 types of people who watch YouTube videos like this and make comments, and that's strangely people who don't care at all and think this is completely stupid. Why are you watching the videos? I don't know, but there's always a few of you in the comments saying, that's dumb, nobody needs this video, this was solved. You're out there. I don't know why you're there. This video is not for you, but some of you watch it anyway. There are the people who watch the videos and say, I knew this already. Awesome. Thank you. And then there are the people who have really intricate questions, and they tend to kind of fall into 2 camps. The people who, you know, want a recipe of just tell me what to do, right? I see this maybe more often with triathletes than a lot of others, but just give me a recipe, right? Tell me exactly what to do, and I'm going to do exactly that. And then there are people who kind of want to understand the mechanics of it and maybe some of the techniques, and then they want to try their own thing. And our videos are really made for those 2 groups. And you know, I call you guys bakers and chefs. Okay, so the bakers are the people who really want a recipe and they just want to do the recipe. And then there are the chefs who just want to understand the ingredients and the techniques and then kind of do their own thing. We try to strike a balance here for those people who say, yeah, but you know, my conditions are this, they're a little bit, you know, I live in Arizona, it's super hot. What do I do in the super hot? Or I live in Alaska and it's super cold. What do I do there? We're trying to give you guys a little bit of, both of those things. But if you don't have extreme conditions, just hot wax your chain and forget about it. And yeah, stop watching these videos. So thanks for the question, Mo. It's a great question, but don't overcomplicate it if you're not interested in overcomplicating it. You know, for most of us, honestly, myself, you know, I just wax my chain, right? For the pro teams, pro athletes, World Tour, Visma Lisa Bike, Unbound, we have a lot of options, right? We can get in the kitchen with a lot of the fancy chef's ingredients and really make something special. So if you're here for that content, or I guess this content is for the people who are into that, but the reality, and again, look at the zero friction data, you know, Super Secret is the #1 lubricant in almost every category in that testing, is the lowest overall wear across the 6,000 kilometer 6-block test that Adam does. And we're really looking here at how to tweak it and tune it for super specific conditions. So yeah, don't stress out if you don't need to stress out. Mr. Kipperfish says, TLDR, add 1/3 bottle of either SILCA drip lube to your hot wax to extend coating life, durability, corrosion resistance, cold, wet, winter conditions, and at the end of winter rainy season, add a strip chip to return to normal. Translation, 3rd bottle, 20 milliliters, 4 US teaspoons. Assumptions made by me, but unhelpfully not explained in the video. Mr. Kipperfish is a pastry chef. This is great. If you are a pastry chef, this is the world you want to live in. You want very specific ingredient list, and you want very specific temperatures, times, and all the data. The problem is for the chefs the regular chefs watching this channel, they're going to say, well, yeah, but it's colder where I live than where you live, so what's my recipe? We don't know. There's an infinite number of recipes. We're giving you some guidance here. Try it out, see what you think. Maybe we will distill a couple of recipes. I think we've done that with the speed chip and endurance chip. Quite frankly, the ones of you out there who like to tinker, no matter what we tell you to do, you're going to go try it 5 different ways and come and tell us where we were wrong or where we were missing it. And so the problem with me giving you a recipe is that most people who use that recipe are going to come back and go, well, that was good for this specific thing, but what about my specific thing? Maybe we will try to add that, but then maybe we do just need to break this down into, are you a pastry chef? Are you a standard, you're trying to become a Michelin chef of chain wax? And if you're not interested in being a chef at all, as was the previous questioner, then just skip the video. Don't stress about it. How do you know when a chain needs wax maintenance? That's a great question, and the answer is the chain is going to start letting you know. It is going to start to get a little tippy-tappy noisy as the wax on the outside of the chain starts to break off and fall off. So you're going to get a little bit more like roller on cog and chainring noise. That is the beginning. A lot of people take that initial onset of noise to mean that the wax has broken down. It hasn't. The wax on the inside, where it's really doing the work, it's still performing, but that is the beginning of the breakdown. So, if I had to put, kind of a timeline to it, a 300-kilometer wax application probably starts to get noisy in the 200 to 225, like tippy-tappy, and then increasingly gets a little bit louder. It will still perform in a laboratory setting during that time period. And if you see, Adam at Zero Friction, his data, 300-kilometer relube intervals, even once the chain is noisy, it is still registering zero wear at the end of the 300K because the wax on the inside is working. It's just your ears can hear it. So, I try to either add a little super secret over top to knock that noise down once I start to hear it, or kind of, I commute in mostly dry conditions, the occasional rain. About 250 to 300K, I pull the chain, throw it in the hot wax. We always have a pot melted here somewhere at work, generally in the lab, and you throw it in there. It takes 2 minutes, pull it out, and you're done. So that's how I do that. But yeah, it'll tell you. This is a great point, though, that oil-based lubricants do not tell you, and in fact hide the fact that they have broken down, and that's where you have to be careful. There are a lot of people out there, we see you in the comments saying, put a whatever 10W40 on it, it lasts forever. Well, it stays quiet for a very long time, but you look at the Zero Friction data from Adam and you see that it has broken down long ago. So just be aware of that. Wax doesn't hide when it's breaking down. Oil hides very well when it's breaking down. Number 7, what is the best temperature for pulling the chain from the wax melter pot? And what's the easiest for breaking in the chain with little mess? And what will have the best longevity? So we've really tested the heck out of this, and we find between 70 and 75 Celsius is the best temperature to pull the wax. That's why the SILCA chain wax system goes to 75. It is a band-style heater, right, open top. So it is very controlled, plus minus 1 degree to 75 at that band. You are typically have a gradient within the wax between about 72 and 75. Much below that, you start to risk getting a skin that forms on the top of the wax. Like if in the prototypes of that system, if we set it at 70, if it was cool in a garage or something when you were running it, you'd get that skin that would form and you would pull it and you would just kind of make a candle essentially out of it. So that 72 to 75, if you really, really want to be anal, you can shut it off, watch it for 2 to 3 minutes, and then pull it right before the skin forms. You can get slight increases in single application longevity that way, but what we found is it's just not really noticeable. There's a real nonlinearity there. Like, pulling it at 68 or 70 is almost immeasurably better than pulling it at 72 to 75, which is not the case. It's actually, that is considerably better than pulling it at, say, 95, where way more wax runs out. So, yeah, 70 to 75 if you're using a thermometer setup, or just leave it at 75 if you're using a SILCA wax system, and you should be good to go. Okay. Oh, what's the easiest for breaking in with little mess? That's also your answer there. The second you start to make a candle out of it by pulling it either when the skin forms or it's just that little bit too cold, you begin to hold real excess wax on the outside of the chain. And so it makes a very big mess when you break it in, and it also just prolongs the break-in period. That's where I think you see people who really have to work it over a PVC pipe or something, and some people even scrape the outside of the chain because you might, particularly in the smaller cogs in the back, you might get a little bit of skipping or jumping if there's excess wax on the side plates of the chain. Pulling it, that 75 range, you don't have any of that. You can pretty much, heck, I don't even break it over a pipe anymore. I just install it and ride it gingerly for about 100 feet, and then you're done. All right, what is the best chain waxing practice to keep from having a rusty chain? This is a great one. And so again, our previous video, we talked about adding a little oil to the wax for very cold, very wet conditions. For just standard wet conditions, an endurance chip can improve the longevity there, riding in the rain. But when that ride is done, you really need to do a couple things. You want to either at least bounce the bike to kind of knock excess water out of the chain. You want to take your microfiber cloth, you want to run the chain through the microfiber cloth to get excess water and grit out. And at a minimum, you want to apply a product like a Super Secret over top of the chain to, one, the alcohol in there will help speed the evaporation of that water. The wax in there will fill in the nooks and crannies that were left open from the previous ride, and it will help reduce the likelihood of that mild surface corrosion from the chain being wet. So at a minimum, you want to add Super Secret. If you have the facilities, a clean water rinse and then bounce and then microfiber is like the next step up. The clean water rinse is going to flush out any gritty kind of road contaminants. You think there's little bits of grit and silt and just gunk on the road surface that gets kicked up in that water. So a clean water rinse is sort of your next level up from there. If you're really kind of going all in, I would pull the chain and just re-wax it. And you can do all of those things. You can boil it in water and then wax it. That's probably your ultimate version of this. But honestly, if you just shake it out and re-wax it, that works incredibly well also. So for people who store their bikes in incredibly humid conditions, Ollie at GCN has always said he stores his bikes in, I think it's like an outdoor shed, and it's quite humid and rainy there in the UK where he lives, and so he has a dehumidifier in there. That really helps. I will say, if you are seeing any little bits of surface rust over time on your chains, you got to think all of the bearings in the bicycle are typically non-stainless steels, because the stainless steels are a little bit softer. So bicycle bearings tend to have non-stainless steel bearings. If you are getting little bits of surface rust from your humidity and rain riding conditions on your chain, you are also getting that inside on the bearing races and places where you can't see it. So a dehumidifier might be an excellent option for you if you're seeing that. So yeah, there you go. We try to keep it simple. I mean, if you're really, if you're really pinched for time, you should be able to bounce the bike, microfiber the chain, apply Super Secret in probably 2 to 3 minutes, and that will guarantee that the chain stays not only properly lubricated, but will not see any surface corrosion. So this is not a huge time suck to keep the thing going. And then all the way out, even if you're re-hot waxing the chain after every rain ride, in terms of actual working time, probably 10 minutes, right? Pull the chain, throw it in, let it sit there. You can do other things, get it out, let it dry. You can do other things while it's cooling, and then you put it back on. There's probably 10 to 15 minutes working time in there. So not too terrible. Similarly, if you're using an oil-based lube or a dry lube, you need to be doing all this same stuff. So that's kind of a common misconception we deal with a lot. Well, I have oil on my chain, I never need to clean it. Well, that's not true. All right. Adam from Zero Friction writes in. He says, "Hey Josh, looks like another one to add to the list of tests. Probably just the Extreme SAL test. But one query on using Synergetic and Synergy in wax. I'm not sure if it's been covered in the comments yet, but you mentioned previously on the rather industrial scent if Synergetic is heated, after feedback from some of those using it flinging into ergos and potentially getting on flywheels that are very hot." That's a great point. So, these Synergetic and Synergy are super high-tech, Type 5, full synthetic, maybe call them like super synthetic oils. They don't smell all that lovely. So if you are putting them into the hot wax, you are going to get a little bit of a smell. Adam kind of comically here says, where is it? There could be some unhappy partners if you are waxing in the kitchen or dining area, etc. That is true. So open window, wax in the garage, just be careful. It doesn't last very long, but there is a industrial smell. And then he does add, I agree with Josh, you've said before, you want 100% lubricant versus adding in scents, colors, fragrances, etc. You know, SILCA may want to look at a Chanel No. 5 version of Synergetic. I wish we had Chanel No. 5. You know, it is the most expensive liquid. I think it's more expensive than most like chemotherapy drugs, right? I mean, what an industry to be in. We can sell this little bottle of nonsense for insane money. Yeah, maybe we're just in the wrong business. But as he said, we sell 100% lubricants. You know, no pink, no yellow, no banana fragrance. But then, yeah, probably don't do that in your kitchen. Rando Jimmy says, is it possible to decant the winter wax with the Synergy or Synergetic added and then save for the next season? Perhaps a silicone mold can be used to create ingots of different blends for different purposes. Jimmy, I like how you think. If you look in our laboratory, we have piles of wax ingots from previous tests. Yeah, you get on Amazon, buy a silicone mold. I mean, there's a million of them out there. You know, you can make little Death Stars, little Han Solos, whatever you want, using silicone ice molds. Yeah, if you have a blend that you like, you know, you can pour it out at the end of the season and say, hey, this is my super cold weather, you know, fat bike wax. I pour it out into an ingot. Just be sure to label it, as we have found many times over in our own laboratory. Occasionally you find an ingot that's unlabeled and nobody has any idea what it is. And then you just have to throw it away because who knows what that could be. At least for us, we have thousands of mixes that we've tested over the years. So, you know, maybe it's a little simpler for you, or maybe you mentioned, maybe Han Solo and Carbonite is your fat bike super cold weather winter wax. Maybe that's how you keep it straight. Love the idea. Rando Jimmy, thanks for that one. Bill Byrne says, hi, should the thermostat setting be a good indication of the temperature of the wax? I set the thermostat to 75 on my SILCA wax melting system, and the wax didn't fully melt. According to the thermostat I put directly into the wax, the temperature was about 60. I had to raise the cooker temperature to 85 to get it to melt. He goes on a little bit in using secret chain blend, etc. So a couple things here. The SILCA hot melt wax system is a PID controlled system to give us extreme temperature control at the high end of the range. What PID does is, and we'll put a graph here, so traditional thermostats, thermostatic control, you are either 100% on or 100% off. This is kind of like how the HVAC system in your house works, right? You're either heating or you're doing nothing, right? You're either cooling or you're doing nothing. Traditional thermostatic control, wax melters, crock pots, you name it, they are either full heating or not heating. And the problem we have with this is that you end up with these overshoots in the, let's look at the graph here. So you see full heat, it's climbing, 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 you hit the set point, and even if you have stopped actually inputting heat at that moment, there is enough kind of heat momentum, right, that's already been cranked in, because you're typically not measuring exactly, you're not measuring in the middle of the wax, right? You're measuring somewhere close to where your heating element is. And so you have to, it's called tuning, and they have to tune these to overshoot a little bit and then ideally drop, and you end up with a band of temperatures. Quite common in something like a crock pot or a cheap wax melter you find on Amazon that people all the time tell us, you know, that's a $25 wax melter from Amazon. Well, it's really different than that, because those are thermostatically controlled, and you have a band of uncertainty around your set point that in most cases is around plus or minus 5 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take. So your full heat, you stop as soon as you hit the number, you overshoot maybe 5 degrees, then it falls through the set temperature. Now you're under temperature by 5 degrees. That is the trigger to go to full power again. And the thermostat controls in this sort of sawtooth pattern around that. And so that is why a cheap thermostatic control pot will oftentimes melt faster, because it is just cranking full heat and power into that thing from zero. With PID control, right, we can actually control the temperature almost in like an asymptotic function, right? So it's a slower, more controlled climb. We're able to almost like a rheostat, right? We have graduations in how we can the power into the heating element, right? So we don't have to, we're not always at 100%. We can maybe be at 100 for a little bit, and then we kind of 90, and then 80, and then 70, and we slowly. So PID is proportional, integral, and derivative. And so basically, you're kind of continually running this little control loop to understand what's happening. And we can add what they would call like a damping effect to this. And so we never actually overshoot. We sort of asymptotically approach and then maintain our desired set point. The downside of this is that it's a slower process because you're just not cranking full heating power into the thing the whole time. The benefit of this, of course, is when we're doing something like strip chip, where we have a 125C target and 135 is the point about which the wax really begins to get damaged or break down, we cannot afford that thermostatic overshoot. Okay, so we really want to creep up on 125 and hold it, because an overshoot could risk us damaging the wax permanently, which would be a bad thing. So PID control logic and all the little things in the electronics here to run that and to actually operate under that control regime, it's just a more complex, more expensive thing. So the solution here, and I think we've talked about it in previous videos, is, start it out at 85 or 100, right? Because you're not overshooting into a danger zone, but you can turn it up. It'll melt faster at those higher temps, drop it to 75. It will never exceed the temperature that you have it set at with the PID control. So sort of for my thinking, it's really the perfect way to balance it, right? It's the lowest risk long-term to the wax. You just have to know how to use the machine properly, it will take a very long time. You think of trying to heat a block of wax to 75 when the thing you're heating with will only go to 75. That's going to take a long time. Analog Cyclist says, what's the best lube to use on a dedicated indoor trainer drivetrain? I'm converted to wax for all my road bikes, but am moving to a dedicated trainer bike. I notice when I use my current road bike on the trainer, if the chain is freshly waxed, I get a showering of wax on the carpet. My big piece of advice here for you would be you need one of those rubber floor pads. You should not be on the carpet. As we talk about with handlebar tape and corrosion and some of these other things, even if you have 10 fans and you think you're not sweating all over the place, you absolutely are sweating all over the place. And just in the same way that bike shops get these trainer bikes in where everything is corroded, we have seen and heard some horror stories of people who've had real significant damage to the subflooring under their carpet. It's terrible to say this, but it's kind of like, people who have like a dog that pees secretly somewhere in the house for months, right? And then finally they realize it, and there's subfloor damage from the repeated soaking. That happens to people on trainer bikes if you're not running on like a rubber pad or some sort of waterproof pad. So first one, definitely get that something under there so you're not sweating onto your carpet and dripping wax flakes onto the carpet. Your best option, I think, is the Synergy. So when we developed this product, we said for e-bike and e-sports, Synergy is a higher viscosity version of the Type 5 base oil in Synergetic. It has added corrosion resisting properties, additives, and it has more of the tungsten disulfide in it to handle the much higher torque loads of e-bike motors, but also the extreme stress of indoor trainer riding. The higher viscosity oil in the Synergy really reduces, more or less eliminates the flinging that can occur under really hard efforts on the trainer. So I would recommend going to a Synergy on that, and what you want to do is apply it, backpedal a number of times, let it soak in, and then use your microfiber cloth to wipe any excess off the outside. Couple applications per indoor trainer season probably are enough to keep you going, and you're not going to get any flinging or any wax flakes. All right, there you have it. I think those are all the questions we have today. Thanks for sending them in. Again, if you have more, please drop them below. We love answering, hearing your thoughts, answering your questions, and yeah. Hope you have a good day. Get out there and ride.